Welcome back, AI curious folk, to AI Ramblings Daily Podcast with me, Michael Parekh, your human AI guide. Again, lots going on. Episode 129. Let's get into it. Today's theme is the question Mr. Market asks every bull market: how high can it go? Every investor, trading investor, long-term investor, etc. Everyone is asking this question. I tend to think about this stuff in pendulums. Basically, these things don't stop where gravity says they should. They always run on momentum and often the swings run wider on either side, and they're tough to predict. And today's theme of how high it can go kind of relates to that, as I will talk about. We're going to talk about three companies today: OpenAI. We're going to talk about SK hynix in terms of the memory, leading global memory company, which has had its own amazing ride this year in terms of how high it can go, and AI acquisitions. And those things also are basically provoking the question how high it can go in terms of valuation. So I'm going to go through each item and my take. Okay, OpenAI. Finally, they're nudging 1 billion weekly users. That's been their metric. They've been talking about it for months and months. They were expected to cross the billion user mark, the weekly user mark, back in December. And it's getting on there in terms of 2026. But they're now approaching 950 billion weekly. And by the way, Google claimed 950 million monthly users just a couple of days ago. So both of them are racing slightly different metrics. The weekly metric is a little harder than the monthly metric, but roughly in the ballpark. And both have a lot of headroom, given that there are 8 billion people on the planet, and at least half of them, if not more, have smartphones. So they can be using these services. And ChatGPT, of course, is the AI brand, the fastest growing product in the history of technology, as some say. Basically, the ChatGPT is around barely 3+ years. So it is the Kleenex of AI in terms of what people think of as AI. So the momentum is impressive. Now, what I wanted to talk about, though, is it's not just the pure metric, the number itself. Obviously, they're very focused on that. They've also been focused for the last few months of reshifting their priorities from the consumer side to the enterprise side to catch up with Anthropic over there, running ahead with Cloud Code, Cloud Cowork, and everything that they're building on top of that, and a higher and annualized revenue run rate than OpenAI. OpenAI claims about 50% of their business already is enterprise. And remember, the billion number, only about 5% are paying ChatGPT subscribers. So that's about 50 million. So it's not the billion. So the metric by itself makes great headlines. What investors obviously care about is how high will the revenues go and how much higher will they go relative to the capex the company is spending, which is in the hundreds of billions of dollars. So those are the relative highs that matter, the pendulums that matter. And that is what is going to be focused on, especially as the company races toward its IPO, potentially not this year, like Anthropic is focused on, $1 trillion plus market cap, but next year. So we will see. But they are at this holy grail number, about close to 1 billion. They didn't say they crossed it, but they're nudging it, so we'll give them that. Remember, 1 billion here, 1 billion there, eventually it adds up to something, but these metrics are very impressive by themselves, but the financial and the overall metrics, it takes decades for these companies to really become what I call internet treasures. In this case, AI treasure companies. What is that? Basically, Amazon is an internet treasure. Google is an internet treasure. Companies that have stood the test of time across decades, serve billions of customers constantly, daily, with extraordinary focus on daily habits that billions of people have developed and engaged and rely on these services. And they've made a lot of money across a range of businesses, whether it's subscriptions, transactions, or advertising. That's what makes what I have always called for 30 years internet treasures or technology treasures. Technology treasures would be, of course, companies like Microsoft, Dell, etc. Those have stood even greater tests of time. And that's what's important in terms of the long-term metrics. And billion here is something to note. and celebrate, but I wanted to highlight this business of the broader context of these metrics. Okay, item number 2. The volatility in memory stocks is continuing. We've talked a lot about this. I talked a lot about this yesterday. The 3 big memory companies on oligopoly on a global basis, SK hynix, Samsung, and South Korea, each have been up several 100% in the last couple of years, are about 50% of the Korean market, each over $1 trillion market cap. And then you have Micron over here. Other companies like Sandisk and others have also had huge runs. And Sandisk, a manufacturing partner in Japan, Kioxia is also a big one. I've written about all of them. They'll be in the show notes, so you can take a look at that. The SK hynix reported numbers, and that's what I wanted to talk about, because this week we had Google report last week. We're going to have most of the big tech companies report literally starting tomorrow and through the week. So we're going to have today, tomorrow, Meta, Amazon, Microsoft, and Apple. So we should talk about SK hynix because they're the big daddy of the memory companies, and their revenue is up over 250%, operating profit over 550%, gross margins 83%. These are software-like margins, and the stock was down about 9-10%. Now, that typically happens, sell on the news kind of thing. I think, again, the media will say, oh, they didn't beat the expectations. Expectation game is a tactical short-term game that people play with Mr. Market. I was a former analyst, head of internet research at Goldman, so I know that game very well. And so you always have a little bit of a sell on the news and volatility around this. In this case, it matters because 14 million of 50 plus million people in South Korea have been trading and around in ETFs, leveraged ones, on SK hynix, on Samsung in Korea. So they've had a lot of margin calls up and down. And with these kinds of moves, a lot of them are being wiped out. Over 1 million people had margin calls in recent days. That's the danger when you're playing momentum trading games on a short-term basis on these wild pendulum swings in terms of trying to guess on how high these markets can go. And today's technologies and platforms like Kalshi and Polymarket basically encourage us to do more of the short term than the long term. So I just wanted to highlight this dynamic. The core story on Hynix is that their demand picture looks very good, and they're building the supply. They're going to be investing a lot of money on additional capex, which, by the way, also causes a reflex action on sell side and buy side professional institutional analysts, because they've had decades of experience with semiconductor companies, especially overinvesting cyclically, and as a result, having shortfalls when the cycles turn. So there's a lot more volatility at the bottom of the tech stack where semiconductors live versus the application companies on the top, and that is a dynamic to be watched here. And by the way, in the context of the other thing that I've talked a lot about, which is RAMageddon, the phenomenon where memory supplies, both in terms of RAM and storage, are so tight that we're going to see price increases continue through the end of the decade. These companies are basically sold out of their supply. So regardless of the volatility on the quarter numbers and so on, you've got to keep that in mind if you're a longer term follower of Mr. Market. So keep that in mind. Let's go to point number 3. Acquisitions, M&A in the AI space. There have been rumblings that a company called Stripe, which is one of the most successful private payment companies worth over $150 billion in the private markets, a few weeks ago, they said, oh, we may want to buy PayPal. So they made a bid, and that doesn't seem to be going anywhere. But they made another consideration that is leaked. They're looking at buying a hot AI company called OpenRouter, company with about 140-ish million in revenues, and the valuations talk is about 10 billion. So that would be a little over 70 times revenues. That compares higher to SpaceX, Elon buying Cursor, which is the AI coding company he bought right before the SpaceX IPO, for about 22, 23 times revenues. Again, former analyst here. The multiples on revenue, earnings, all these things are important. What drives these things are strategic aspirations, things that you cannot measure, that are not in the numbers, not in the metrics. The possibilities of combining A with B and creating ABC. Most mergers actually don't work out for a whole host of reasons. There is qualitative issues and quantitative issues, and that's what you got to keep in mind. But the numbers from a valuation point of view, when you take snapshots and the media talks about this, they're going higher. And they can go higher given that we're still in the early days of the AI tech wave, just year 4, so much more to build. And every company, incumbent or startup, knows from the lessons of the prior tech waves that if you consistently build ahead of your competition and build it on top of your own products and services, build it in terms of new products and services for the customers you serve, you can build a lot of value very quickly beyond just the momentum game of uh, announcing acquisitions for acquisition's sake. Stripe is a serious, pragmatic company, very prone to very thoughtful execution. So I would have higher aspirations for them in terms of this or any other acquisitions they consider. But each one is a bespoke item and you have to analyze it in thorough detail. We'll come back to more on this later, but I wanted to use this as an example of how high it can go in terms of the M&A environment for AI stocks. So my overall take on all of this is that we are still very much in the early days of the AI tech wave, and it's the momentum-driven wave. There's a lot of bullish sentiment, a lot of fear and greed, a lot of fear of missing out, whether it's in terms of investors chasing things or companies trying to say, hey, if we don't do this now, this will not be as cheap tomorrow as it is cheap on a relative basis. And remember, inexpensive, expensive are all relative terms for the most part. And we've seen it here in the context of single flagship companies like OpenAI, flagship memory companies like SK Hynix, and flagship companies on the M&A side that have been involved, like SpaceX, biggest IPO ever, and biggest acquisition in technology ever with their AI coding acquisition for $60 billion for Cursor, and Stripe, one of the biggest, most successful private companies in tech in history, still private, over a decade, and now looking to really lean into the AI tech wave. So all of this is important to kind of note and understand in terms of the broader context. And remember, the pendulum always can swing wider, not based as much on the fundamentals, more on the momentum. And that's the distinction one needs to figure out how to always make. Okay, let's move to the gadget AI section. Here, I'm going to talk about a weird kind of gadget. These are drones that make deliveries, food and goods. This is something that Amazon kind of was really into, had been into, I should say, over the last few years. Invested a lot in drones, drone deliveries, because they're obviously a delivery business. Created one of the biggest infrastructure systems on the planet Earth, bigger than FedEx, bigger than UPS, USPS, and all the other international delivery companies. Well, flying drones, flying robots is the next thing people have been focused on. And Amazon has tempered its delivery ambitions on the drone side, but they're still picking away at it. New company has jumped in. DoorDash, one of the biggest food delivery companies, is building its own delivery drones, and they just got a nod from the FAA, which is why I wanted to talk about it. And it's interesting. There's a lot of detail in terms of what they're finding. They're finding that this is not going to replace all their deliveries. Remember, majority of their deliveries are in urban environments. This is for the rural places, the places where it takes 15, 20, 30 minutes each way to make a delivery. That's where these things could potentially be helpful. It's early days technology. It's very cool to see these things fly and take off. Plenty of videos on TikTok and YouTube on drone deliveries in Shanghai and China and so on, because they love to show off these things. And they make these things in a lot more than we do, so they can show them off a lot more than we do. So, but it's good to see the US companies in the action. It's still a sideshow, but interesting nevertheless. And they do go pretty high and come back down with our goods and services, hopefully safe and sound. Let's move into the questions for today. First of all, just we're talking about drone deliveries, and I'm a drone nut. Am I impressed with this mode of delivery? I'm a sucker for anything technology does that's cool, and this is definitely one of those cool things. In a similar way, I'm very impressed with robot drones in hotels in China, where they literally make delivery to your door in your hotel room. So drones, another version of that. But recognize that these are still early days and the technology has a long way to go. So it's a novelty technology, the service, and I do like that. The one area, the question number 2, what part of this could be improved, Well, my biggest complaint with food delivery through DoorDash or Uber Eats or whatever is that notion that every once in a while the order is wrong and the delivery person is gone by then, and it's you basically have to make do with whatever was delivered and complain, and they'll give you a refund and all. And these companies have been gotten very good at those things, but with a drone, maybe I can send the order back and get a replacement order very fast without feeling guilty that I'm making a human driver go all the way back and forth. So that would be an improvement in terms of being able to use drones in a different way to correct delivery errors. So we'll see as and when these things become more mainstream, etc. But they're fun to talk about, to watch, and discuss. Okay, so that is our show for today. I also wanted to point out our Reset to Zero post today, 1162, which went out this morning. It's on patents for AI. And it's interesting. Again, the Asian companies are ahead, about 100,000 patents so far, now that organizations are counting this on AI agents. And it's interesting that the OpenAIs and the Anthropics don't have as many patents. There's interesting ranking, a lot of interesting implications of all of this, which early days I just wanted to point out. If you have an interest in these kinds of metrics, do take a look. Tomorrow we'll be back with ARD 130 and Reset to Zero 1163. I want to thank you again for joining us today, AI curious folk. Stay tuned.